saw something. This is kind of for my Canadian strikes. I saw this. This is definitely for my Canadian strikes. I saw a news article on Halloween that bothered me. This popped up on Halloween, and this bothered me. And I want to talk about this. I wanted to talk about this. Basically, there was a Supreme Court hearing recently in Canada. And the Supreme Court hearing involved, oh god damn it, are you kidding me? It's not gonna let me look at it, son of a bitch. Okay, hang on. Basically, there was a Supreme Court ruling in the case of two men who were in possession of child porn. And basically, they were arguing that the 1-year mandatory minimum is cruel and unusual, and therefore it is unconstitutional, because a 1-year minimum for sex offenses like this are, accessing and possessing child porn is like cruel, and a 1-year minimum, 1-year mandatory minimum is cruel and unconstitutional. And the Supreme Court of Canada agreed. The Supreme Court of Canada actually agreed that a 1-year mandatory minimum for someone accessing or possessing child porn is considered cruel and unusual, and thus unconstitutional. I'm not kidding. And I wanted to bring that article up. Unfortunately, let me see if I can find it again. Let me see if I can find that article again. Because, okay, here we go. Is this it? Hang on, let me see. Ah, here we go. This is something. Okay, I think it's not the same article, but it's the same. So, it was a 5-4 decision, and
they most likely are some of the guilty. Cheer 100, cheer 100.
I definitely think that some
cheer 100. I vote for the wood chipper.
So basically, let me see if I can find the bullshit. Ah, here we go. So, bearing in mind, the two individuals, I don't think it's showing in here, the two individuals who are being sentenced for this, had in possession of something like over 1,000 pieces of child porn on their computer. Okay, bear that in mind. The example that their defense attorneys gave to say why this was cruel and unusual, they examined a fictional, bearing in mind, this is not the scenario of what these two people were charged and or convicted for. This was a hypothetical that the defense postulated to the Supreme Court, in which an 18-year-old receives via cell phone from his friend of the same age an explicit photo of the friend's 17-year-old girlfriend. The recipient keeps the image on his cell phone and looks at this photo briefly, knowing that it constitutes child porn. In the age of digital communication, it is not far-fetched that an 8-year-old might receive from a friend an image corresponding to the definition of child pornography, and therefore they're constituting it as it's cruel and unusual for the 1-year mandatory minimum by doing this absolute bullshit example. Like an absolute bullshit example of an 18-year-old. His friend sends him an explicit photo of the 17-year-old girlfriend, and he looks at it briefly when he receives it and then doesn't look at it again, and that 18-year-old could be construed as being in possession of child porn. And it's like, And it's talking, imposing a sentence of 1 year on the 18-year-old when a fit punishment would be conditional discharge with strict probationary terms would constitute a grossly disproportionate sentence, which, like, motherfucker, in the example that the defense gave, the prosecuting attorney could very easily just change up the charge that the 18-year-old would be charged with. If said charge was to be brought, they wouldn't need to actually charge him with possession of child porn in the fictitious example that the defense attorneys gave. They could charge him with probably a whole host of other offenses in that kind of situation. But because the Supreme Court of Canada, at least where more than half of them are fucking cooked up probably PDFs themselves, they should, we should definitely take away the 1 year mandatory minimum for possessing child porn. The Supreme Court of Canada just ruled in favor of child predators. How fucked up is this? That they are actually that they ruled in favor of child predators. This is fucking disgusting. This is absolutely fucking disgusting that the highest court in the land is siding with predators. No, it was a hypothetical, Tom. The 8-year-old thing was a hypothetical the defense postulated to eliminate the mandatory 1 year minimum. And in response to this, the Alberta Premier is basically calling on the federal government to pull out the notwithstanding clause to override the Supreme Court, which they need to. In this case, I'm usually not a fan of the use of the notwithstanding clause because a lot of provinces lately have been pulling out the notwithstanding clause for insane reasons, like Quebec basically pulling out the notwithstanding clause saying that French is the provincial language, and if you're going to reside in Quebec, you have 6 months to learn the language, or you will not receive any provincial assistance in English. You will only receive it in French. And they did that because Quebec pulled off the notwithstanding clause by saying, oh, yes, our French language is under threat, which it's not, by the way. That's fucking bullshit by, like, alarmists. The notwithstanding clause is basically where the federal government or the provincial government can basically say, yeah, we don't fucking care what the law says. We're overriding it. And that's what the notwithstanding clause is basically a means for a province, or in this case, the federal government, to say, yeah, we don't care about the laws. We're doing our own thing. That's it. Normally, I don't like the notwithstanding clause because it's been getting used to basically just play fuck around, where individual provinces go, we're better than everyone else. And so particularly Quebec saying, yeah, we hate Canada, we hate the English language, so everything's in French, and we're using the notwithstanding clauses. In this case, I think it's needed because, number one, I think every fucking Supreme Court justice that voted in favor of removing the mandatory minimum for possessing child porn needs to have their computers examined. Every fucking one of them. Every single Supreme Court justice that said, yes, we need to get rid of the mandatory minimums for possessing child porn needs to have their computers, every single hard drive they own examined. Because I cannot see any fucking reason why any Supreme Court justice could come to the conclusion that, possessing child porn, using the bullshit excuse of the 18-year-old receiving a text message from his friend, and that text message includes a lewd image of his 17-year-old girlfriend, and then he supposedly would get a minimum of 1 year. No, that's a bullshit fucking reason. It's a bullshit fucking excuse. And I think every single one of those Supreme Court justices needs to have their hard drives torn apart and see what they are hiding. Because no rational human being would look at that argument and go, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense for us to reduce the mandatory minimum. Get rid of the mandatory minimum of 1 year for possessing child porn. Yes, we're going to side in favor of the predators. It's just fucking insane. And I hope to God that the federal government does pull out the notwithstanding clause and looks at the Supreme Court and go, Yeah, we're not listening to your bullshit fucking excuses. It's still going to be at least 1 year mandatory minimum for possessing of child porn. I really hope they do it. Correct. They removed the mandatory minimum of 1 year. So now someone can go. So now by the Supreme Court doing that, someone could go in front of a judge under the charge of possession of child porn, be found guilty, and if the defendant has a big enough sob story, the judge might go, okay, 30 days in jail. Or even go, time served, you can go home now. That's what this does. That's what this does. Writing for majority, Justice Mary Moreau said that when mandatory minimums apply to a broad range of situations, they can impose a grossly disproportionate sentence on certain offenders. Yeah, and Garrett, to counter that, with the example that they gave, where it's a minor little thing about an 18-year-old having his friend send him a lewd picture of his 17-year-old girlfriend, they don't need to charge him with possession of child porn. The prosecution does have the discretion to not charge someone with possession of child porn for that particular offense, where it's an 18-year-old received a lewd photo of his buddy's girlfriend from his buddy. He could change it to something else that would not make it possession of child porn, which was conveniently ignored. And it's just, it's insane. This is just in. Oh yeah, no, Gary, I understand. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like the counter argument by the prosecution in the Supreme Court could have been, in a situation like that, the Supreme Court has latitude and autonomy that they can that they don't necessarily have to charge an offender like that with child porn. They can actually choose to change it to a lesser offense that does not carry a mandatory 1 year minimum if the situation dictated. I'm just saying. It's fucking insane. It makes me ashamed of our court system. It really does. I am fucking ashamed of the people that we have running our court systems right now. Fishy, it's removing the mandatory minimum for child porn. If that's rage bait, they got me. Cause I'm fucking pissed. I'm fucking pissed that they would basically go in favor of a predator and say, oh, we don't want to be too harsh on the child predators. If that's rage bait, fine, I'm caught. I'm okay with that. So, yeah. Anyway, that's something, it's something we're going to talk about. I don't know if I'm going to get a video up about it tomorrow, but it's something I want to talk about because this is not making the news that it should be. This is not being heard. A lot of people are not aware of this when they should be. There's so much shit going down. I think this flew under the radar, and I am trying to bring light to this so more people in Canada are aware of it. That they are aware of what is happening and what just happened in the Supreme Court this past week.